As I mentioned, the next topic that we're going to be looking at is the practice analytics. So I'm going to go back and open that up. But before we jump into it, let me explain to you a little bit about what we're referring to in practice analytics. Practice analytics is a tool that will be replacing business objects and business intelligence, depending on which one you're using today. It also would be replacing your executive dashboard tool. So for any of you that have the digital dashboard, this would be a replacement for that as well. A big difference between business objects and practice analytics is a data warehouse, meaning that the information is being stored in a separate database and it is updated every night with any changes that have occurred to the data. So in today's world, if you were to go in and run a business objects report, it would be running against the live database. So as many of you know, that's something you wouldn't do in the middle of the day if you were running a big report, because your users might see some system degradation based on you processing that report. Well, by using a data warehouse, you're not going to have that issue because it is not running against the live data. It's running against the information as of sometime overnight. So it is a very current database, but it is not running against live data. So that's what we're referring to when we're talking about practice analytics. Now, practice analytics basically is going to have three key areas. One area is the dashboards, and we looked at a couple of those a moment ago, but we're going to go back through and look at those in detail here in just a sec. The second is what's referred to as solution reports. The solution reports would have been like the library of reports that you could have downloaded from like Mind Greenway, business objects reports that had already been written. And there may have been 30 or so of those available to you out on Mind Greenway. Well, in Entergy, there's over 560 already created solution reports that are available to you. They're all customizable. So if you looked at one and said, and we'll look at one in a minute and we'll tweak it a little bit, but if you found one that was close to what you needed but not quite, instead of building a report from scratch, you could just customize an existing report. Or you have the ability, of course, to build one completely from scratch if that's what you need to do as well. But I think since there's so many reports currently available in Entergy, you're going to find that you probably don't have to build too many of those from scratch. So that is what you can go in and do. Now, I've had a couple of questions. Can we still use Success during the transition? Once you convert from Success to Entergy through that migration, the hope is that you should not still need to go back to Success, because we are converting all of that data into Entergy for you. But let's say that you decided you were ready to go live on October 1st. You know, the Success database would still be available to you if you needed to go back and references up until the end of the year. And then your business intelligence reports, you will have to recreate those in Practice Analytics. So if you have some of your favorite reports that you've written, the system cannot automatically regenerate those for you, so you would have to recreate them or look for and find one that already exists that's similar and just customize it. But let's start off by looking at the different types of dashboards that are available inside of Practice Analytics. And this is the replacement for business objects, business intelligence, and the digital dashboard capabilities. So this would be a replacement for all three of those things. So if you have business objects today or business intelligence, then this would be included in the like-to-like product swap that your account rep is talking to you about. Okay, so dashboards. One thing, if any of you had the digital dashboard capability in Success, you're aware that that primarily was a financial set of dashboards. Very little other type of information was included in that. In the Entergy dashboards, you not only have the financial, but this is also where you're going to have a series of things like your UDS reports are going to be having their own dashboard. Your CQMs, you have a dashboard for those, as well as some productivity type reports. And in addition, of course, your financial reports are there as well. So we're just going to start here at the top and look at your quality measures. So if there were particular CQMs that I was interested in taking a look at or reporting on, you see the list here that's available to you. And it is much more extensive than the ones that we had available today in Success. But if I were looking for a particular measure, I can highlight that measure, and then here on the right is going to give me a brief description of what's included in that measure. And if I needed more additional information, I can also open that up to get some further details about what the requirements are for that CQM information, and then how that information is being captured today in Entergy. So you do have the ability to drill down and look at that type of information. I also have the ability to change the reporting period that I'm wanting to look at. If I want to further narrow it down, like right now I'm looking at that we're at 25 percentile as an organization. But I may want to go in and say, well, just tell me how one of my locations is doing. So I could bring it up, pick out the particular location, and I see that that location's doing slightly better with 26% compared to the 25 as a whole. Or if I wanted to further narrow it down to a particular provider, I could do that. Or maybe I want to look and just see how we're doing with our Medicare patients. So I could go and limit that down to a particular carrier code to see how I'm doing on a particular plan. So as I highlight those particular selections, the view of the data, like in this case, is looking at a breakdown by the measure provider. But if I wanted to change that, maybe I want to break down by race, or I want to do a breakdown by language. I have all of these different options that I can go through and select, and then the graphical presentation is going to change to those selections. So depending on the different breakdowns that you want to see, these are the different things, like your service centers, maybe equivalent departments in some cases, or the specialties. So you do have different ways that you can slice and dice that information. If I go on over to measure detail, this is where it's actually going to allow me to see a breakdown of the patients that are included in those numbers. The ones that I'm able to look at here are the ones that are in the numerator. The ones that are in the denominator that we have not completed would be the blank spaces here. If I needed to drill in and see more details on that, I could go in and say, well, show me the visits that are making up those numbers, or let me see the exclusions, so I can further drill into the information. I also can go over and do a scorecard, which is like a little mini report of that information, but it's also a scorecard that I can use to submit as well. And that can be done for my CPC Plus, for my CQMs, for my MIPS, and my PCMH. So I can go through, select the measures that I want to run it based on, and then produce a scorecard. You also have your operational measures, those being the ones that are more for the organization, like your coordination of care measures. And in addition, for all of my FQHCs that are on the line, your UDS also has its own dashboard as well. So for each of the individual UDS tables, as you can see here below, all of the tables are broken out. So if there was a particular one that I was looking for, I can select that particular table, and then under the grant reports, if I need to slice that differently to look at just my migrant health or just my health care, or if I'm just looking for the universal report, I can by default have that. When I get into the trends then, since the report that I've selected is for age and sex, those are the different parameters that I'm seeing the information broken down by. If I needed to break it down and just say males or just say females, I can further divide that information. Again, having the different filter selections here on the left, and then report details would allow me to go in and see the information that you're reporting to the government, to HRSA, for those different measures. And if I needed to get into the detailed information, that information is available to me here at the bottom as well. So for each of your individual UDS measures, whether it's the CQM on Table 6B or something like the financial data, when you open up into the trends are going to reflect the type of data that's included in that type specific report, and then the report details will show you the information in the standard UDS type format for which you're typically reporting. In addition to the CQMs, you also have some population health tools that allow you to further drill down into certain populations of your patients. Okay, I'm going to stop for just a minute because I've gotten several questions that have come in, so I'm going to take a break to answer a couple of questions before we go any further. Laura, the question you have as far as the number of users and license, I'm going to let your account exec reach out to you on that. They can give you that type of information as far as the number of users. That's not a question I can answer for you. Historical data set, yes, all of the information that's being brought over as discrete data, you will have the ability to report out of business analytics once that data has been converted in. Measures being filtered by pediatrics, that's where I would just put in the age limits on the different measures. So here on this front screen, one sec, you see the ability to limit those to a particular age set. So I could see only my pediatric patients. So that is an option for you. Okay, you do have some other questions there. I see that are more maybe doing with sexual orientation and some of those type things. I'm going to show you another tool that I think will address some of those questions for you in one sec, so I'll come back to that one. You can, on the CQMs, you can download a report, like a quarter report, directly out of Entergy. So yes, you can do that. Okay, with the UDS information is going to be updating every night as new data comes into the system. That information is part of Practice Analytics. So you can be looking at your UDS information every day. So as the year goes throughout, now what UDS measures it's running against will be based on since the last update. So if I were running them in March, they're probably still running against last year's rules and regulations. If they make changes in September, once those changes are put into Entergy, they would be applied back to the data in the system. And you can export any of the data out of these reports directly into Excel or an Access database. So all of those options are available to you. I'm going to go back and answer the question. Someone wanted to see some of the patient populations broken down by some additional demographic type factors. The tool that I'm going to be opening up now is an example of like pulling out a certain cohort of patients based on some of the demographic factors. If any of you are familiar with a NAC program that started 2 or 3 years back called Prepare, P-R-A-P-I-A-R-E, Prepare, there were very specific questions that were related to more like social determinants of care. And so like sexual orientation, gender identification. So there are a lot of fields here that are in addition to the type of demographic data. So some of these different types of fields may be relating to some of the questions you may have. In addition to that information though, if there are other demographic fields that I'm capturing like as a medicine unique finding, I can pull that information out, and I'm going to show you another tool that I can use. But these are a lot of examples of some of the fields that I know that NAC has been asking for FQHCs to be able to have the ability to report from. So if some of these things are concerns to you, you do have a tool that would allow you to say, I'm only looking for patients that are Latino, that are female, and now I've narrowed down to just one patient in my database that meets those parameters. So you do have the ability to use some of these other determinants of care to look at the patient population, pull out just certain date ranges of patients that I'm wanting to see, or pull them out by different providers or locations. Another tool that I want to go in and show you, similar in the same type thought process, except this is more looking at the clinical data to pull out information related to a patient. Some of you may be using the Clinical Event Manager in Success EHS today to go out and pull out certain patient populations. So for instance, if I were just looking for my diabetic patients, I could go and say just diabetic. So now I'm 30 patients that have diabetes, but maybe I'm only looking for the ones that had a certain lab result. So I could go in and say only the ones with an A1C above a 9. Or maybe I'm looking for the ones that are missing. So maybe what I actually want to do is go in and identify my patients who have not had an A1C within a specified amount of time. So I could also be looking for the ones that are missing information, also including their medications or their allergies, or maybe in pediatrics I'm looking for immunizations. And then the findings gets into the discrete data that you're checking off as part of your templates. Entergy is based on medicine, the same as Success is. So it does give you the ability to go in and extract information on the individual medicine findings. We also have other different types of dashboards that are around, like your PCMH measures or things that are specific to like diabetic, preventative health. So you have some different measures. If I'm looking for a certain subset of patients based on demographic data, I can also come in, for instance, and say just the patients within a certain zip code. Maybe we're looking to decide if we're going to open a new location, or the ones that were referred by friends or were referred from a walk-in, things like that. This is also where I could go in to look at my referring doctor analysis to see where my patients are being referred to me from. When you get into the patient list, this is allowing me to see the patients that are meeting whatever parameters I've selected. And when you come over to selections, you're going to see other types of data that you can use in determining who should be included or excluded. Maybe I don't want to include my deceased patients. I only want the ones that are active. So you do have some additional options that you can use in selecting those patients. Now, we looked at the financial summary earlier, so I'm going to skip that one for right now. But I wanted to jump down to the practice productivity. This is like your, on your dashboard today, you can see your no-shows and your cancellations. You do have a dashboard here inside Practice Analytics that allows you to do that. I also could go and look like availability. Maybe Dr. Ford is saying, you know, I think I am so overworked, you know, I'm over 100%. And I can say, well, actually, based on your availability to be scheduled, we've not exceeded your capacity in the last few months. So I could go in and look at that utilization rate, appointments by availability, so I can see things like that. You do have the ability when you're going and looking, I can say, well, don't include the no-shows. So I want to see what difference that would make, or don't include non-patient. So you do have different ways that you can look at that information. Seeing the patients that were included broken down by demographics. And then when you get to selections, again, different selections parameters based on the different type of report. Now, for those of you who have been with me all day for these different sessions, you've heard me talking about tasking. And since tasking is such a key part of Entergy, you want to make sure that you can go in and evaluate. So maybe I'm wanting to look at messages that have been unread, that are still marked as open, but I specifically want to know how Dr. Ford is doing. And I see that he only has 12 open tasks that he has not read. And then I could go in and actually say, okay, those are the ones that I actually want to go in. So now it's giving me a list of what those 12 items are, along with a due date. So if he's delinquent on following up on those tasks, I do have the ability to go back and see that information as well. Now, dashboards are just one part of Practice Analytics. So now I want to jump down to solution reports. The solution reports are those predefined reports that are already available to you. And you see you have different folders of different types of reports that have already been written. So for instance, if I were looking for a particular financial report, As I highlight a report, at the bottom, it's going to be giving me just a general summary of what that report is about. I can then go in, select whichever report, open the report up. The first thing it's going to show me are the different parameters, the different data fields that I've selected to be a part of this report. And it also gives me the ability, there we go. One sec here. Okay, gives me the ability to see all of those different fields and further define if I want to put limitations, put filters. Instead of all procedure codes, there's only a certain group of codes I want, or a certain, date range. So I could go through and limit using Boolean logic to determine what are the different field parameters that I want to use. Then when I say next to actually run the report, depending on the information that I had included, it's now divided that information here at the top. It's summarized the information, in this case, by insurance plan, because that's what I had run it based on. And I've got my charges and my payments and my adjustments and so forth here. At the bottom, I have the raw data. Now, if I looked at this report and I said, wow, this is close to the information that I was looking for, but I need to know something different. Maybe one of the things I want to do is I need to know how many unique patients are part of each one of those different plan classes. So I could come down here and say, give me a distinct patient count, and now it's added that to my report. So if that was a report then that I said, okay, now that's the way that I want that report to be, I could save it and name it and run it in at any point. If I needed to graph out that data, you do have graphical capabilities so that I can go in and run and graph any of that information as need be. And I also have the ability to schedule reports. We talked about that earlier. If I wanted to schedule those every week or every month, I do have the ability to go in and schedule my reports. And then you do have the ability to send those reports out to individuals or like to Excel or to Access. So you do have different tools that you can use in deciding what to do with those reports. In addition to the solution reports that are pre-built, and again, there's over 560 of those that are already available, you also have the ability to write your own report. So I could come in and choose a data set, and that would be similar to like those information folders you have in Business Objects where it's grouping like data together. Same concept here where I could see, different types of information, and I can choose any of those fields to include in my report. I also can have my favorites fields, so maybe there's things that I typically like to go in, so I could say I want to see charges, payments. I also want to see the amount paid. I need to know the carrier class, so I could choose the different fields that I want to include. On the right, it's showing me the fields that are going to be included in this report. Then I can go in. Again, I could filter by any of those fields, then go in and tell the system to write that report for me. And it's going to build it out, raw data at the bottom, because I haven't told it how I want to summarize it. Now, if I said, well, give me a total by the charges, I could go in and say, and I also want to charge a total by the payments, but I want to group it based on the insurance carrier. So I can come in and say, do a quick filter breakdown by the insurance class, and now it's done that. So you can write your own reports. You can use the existing report or customize any of those solution reports, as well as having the dashboard. So I'm going to go back and try to answer some questions before we take our next break here. We talked about you can export the information. You can customize and add additional data fields to the demographics that you're capturing inside Entergy, and then those fields are reportable, extractable information. Practice units, financial groups. Okay, we'll talk, Amanda, we can come back and talk to you individually about your financial group situation. So that's going to be something we have to talk about one-off for you there, but we can do that. We can have your account exec reach out to you on that. Monthly reports, yes, if there's certain reports, you can save your own favorite reports so that you know the ones that you typically want to go in and run. Can you set defaults for all of these reports? Yes, as you go through and look at the different reports, you do have the ability to save them with certain parameters of the way that you would typically run those, and you can save them and rename them yourself. Not everybody has access to go in and run. There is a separate security login that is required to go into Practice Analytics, so you'll decide who has access to it or not. And not everybody has access to the dashboards. Just answered that one. There is a limited number of user logins that you have. It is concurrent, is my understanding, but again, you'll need to talk to your account exec for the specifics on that. I'll let them talk to you about that. Is there a more robust reporting query building option like SAP or Business Intelligence? I think you're going to find that this is a pretty robust tool. I'm not sure if there's something more specific you're looking for than what's available here. But if you have specific questions on that, if you'll let your account exec know that, we can certainly see if this tool has that capability for you. I would hope that it does. Save reports in Business Intelligence, you will have to recreate. So we cannot, unfortunately, copy that information over. And can you use MySQL language? That I don't know. I'll have to let your account exec check on that as well for you. I'm not sure about that. Okay, I think we are up against another stop here. So we are going to be taking another 5-minute break, which will put us back at 2:02. And the next topic that we're going to be looking at is just some general system administration, doing some setup of files, things like that. So let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll move on to the next topic.